This video is the second part to my tutorial on Heartbeat. In the first video, I showed how to install, configure, setup, and secure Heartbeat. So if you don't know how to do any of that, I will leave a link to the first video in the description of this video. For this video, I want to elaborate on a few notes about the Heartbeat dashboards. Then I will explain how to email ourselves an alert if any of the services we are monitoring experiences downtime. And this process can also be used to monitor the expiration dates of SSL certificates. By the end of this video, you should have a good grasp of what Heartbeat can do, how to use Kibana alert rules, and how to use an open source tool called Logstash to send emails. And while watching this video, if you find the contents helpful, then press the like button. And if you want to be informed of new videos as we release them, press the subscribe button. So let's get started. Continuing from our previous video where we installed Heartbeat observers, I want to mention a couple of things. The first is that after you install Heartbeat, you really just get this one dashboard, which is, I would say, pretty self-explanatory. You list your monitors, you can click into any monitor and see some of the most obvious metrics. Very useful, but also very simple. We did go ahead and set up another dashboard, which is, let's say, this was a map of showing you where our observers are, but that's basically it. So unlike the other beats, the installation of Heartbeat doesn't come along with too many dashboards. And I think that makes sense. There's not much more you need to know about monitors. However, if you go to the installation guide of Heartbeat, there is a note here that if you want additional dashboards for Heartbeat, there is a repository here that offer those. I haven't tried these myself, so you guys can feel free to try it yourself. One thing I would mention is that I noticed that the last feature or commit was almost 3 years ago, so I don't know if these will actually work with Elastic version 8, but I thought I'd just mention it in case anyone wanted to give it a try or they feel that there aren't enough dashboards for Heartbeat. The other thing I want to mention is if you expand on one of these monitors, there is a tab here that says investigate. And I've noticed that some people might be confused by these investigate options. For example, if I were to open up this link, show host metrics, or open up this link, show host logs, they often are surprised to find that these pages basically list nothing, or shows you a page like this, or it shows you a page like this. And that's because this view will be enabled if Filebeat is installed to the server that you're monitoring. And this page will be enabled if Metricbeat is installed to the server you're monitoring. And the keyword here is the server you're monitoring, right? So the server we're monitoring is this 192.168.0.60 server, which is the server that we have the Apache website on. So if we install Filebeat and Metricbeat to this server, then it will enable these pages here. So some people might confuse that Filebeat or Metricbeat must be installed on the Kibana server or must be installed on the same server as your Heartbeat observer, but that's not the case. You want to install Metricbeat or Filebeat to the target server that you're monitoring. So I'll just do a quick example. So this is the server 192.168.0.60, which is basically this server. And I've already put a script here called install.sh. And these are the installation instructions for Metricbeat and Filebeat. I won't go into detail how to install these things because I already have videos on that. So let me just do a quick run through of this. Okay, Metricbeat and Filebeat have been installed. Let's go ahead and set up, configure, and run everything. So I won't go into the details of every single line. You can watch that in our Metricbeat tutorial. Set this to true. This would be our Kibana URL. Elastic.evermite.net. We are using SSL. I don't care about security right now, so I'm just going to use a super user here. And I believe that should be it for this file. And let's run the setup command. Let me just copy and paste it. And this might take a moment, so I'm going to pause until it is done. All right, with the installation done, let's take a quick look at this metrics tab now. Great, the dashboard has been enabled. And if I do systemctl enable Metricbeat, systemctl start Metricbeat, and in a moment, we should see data here. Now let's enable this one, which is Filebeat. We will say yes to this, true, and let's set this to true as well so we can load external modules. Yes to the dashboard. Kibana URL. Elastic connection. Yes to SSL. I don't care about security for this demonstration, so let's just use the super user. Okay, let's run the setup. And this might take a moment. Okay, it looks like Filebeat has been set up. So if I refresh this page, we should see some controls now. Great. Now let's actually enable Filebeat. And in a moment, we should, oh, actually there is one more thing we should do. We should go into modules.d and let's take a look at systemctl. Let's enable this. And let's go ahead and enable this as well. And you know what, I think, and let's move this. And I think we even have an Apache one. Let's open this one up. Let's enable this. All right, so in a moment, we should see logs in here as well. All right, let's see if anything comes in. There we go. All right, we're seeing Apache logs already. Any metric logs? Let's click here again. Oh, there we go. Okay, so now we're starting to see some metric data in here. So that's basically how you can enable some of the options under this Investigate tab. If you're using Kubernetes and others, you would do similar types of setup on your target machine that you're monitoring to enable these other options. The next thing I want to talk about are the alerts and rules. So with alerts and rules, you can basically set up notifications to monitor any issues with uptime or if certain SSL certificates are about to expire. If I were to click on this monitor status rule, I see this window here saying additional setup is required. That's because this is a completely new instance of Kibana and Elastic, and there's some security settings that need to be met in order for you to enable rule creation. Setting up rules around monitors and TLS can also be done through the stack management. Let me click the stack management and rules and connectors. So you can do it here as well. It's the exact same functionality, but you can also see here there's a notice about additional setup being required. To enable the rules and connectors functionality, we need to add the property xpack.encryptedsavedobjects.encryption to our kibana.yaml file on our Kibana server. And this property needs to have a string that's at least 32 characters. So let me just type this in like that. So that's 10 characters, 20, 30, and I'll just do this. Now you want this encryption key to be a bit more secure and hard to guess. I'm just keeping it simple like this for now, for demonstration purposes. Now if I go to my Kibana server, so this terminal window is my Kibana server, and if I go to the Kibana file, cd etc Kibana, and if I open up this kibana.yaml file, and I added this line to anywhere in this document and restart Kibana, this would fully enable my rules and connectors area. But because this 32, or in this case 34 character string is supposed to be a secret, I'm going to use the key store instead to store this property value. So if I go to the binary folder of the Kibana directory in share USR, I can do Kibana key store add, and we're going to take this property here, hit enter. Oh, let's see. Yeah, I just typing mistake. Let's do this. All right. So add this property, and it's going to prompt me to paste in the value. So I'll take this. And just by doing this, we've effectively added the xpack encrypted saved object.encryption key property to the Kibana configuration. And now I just have to restart Kibana. And let's see if it took the change. Okay, so all infos, no errors so far. And if I come here, if I hit refresh, okay, so it might take a minute, so I'll pause for a moment. Okay, it looks like Kibana has fully restarted now. Now if I log in, and now we're ready to start creating our first rule. Okay, let's create our first rule. I think a very simple rule could be something to notify us whenever there's downtime with any of the services that we're monitoring. And to do that, you can click on this button, create rule, fill out some of these details, and the rule type you want to use would be uptime monitor status, in which case you get this type of control here. You can do exactly the same thing from the observability section. So if we go to observability overview, if I scroll down to the show monitors or click on uptime monitors, you will then get this menu option here, create rule and monitor status rule. All right, so this is more of a shortcut to get to the same functionality as the previous screen. So let's just do it here. Let's monitor for any downtime. So I'll call it monitor uptime. And let's say we scan this rule, or we run this rule every 2 minutes. We will notify ourselves every 2 minutes, because check interval is 2 minutes. And you can see that this is already using the monitor uptime rule type. And let's say any monitor is down. Let's just do something that will definitely trigger things. If monitor is down, if any monitor is down more than one time within the last, let's actually do 2 minutes. Okay, and that's pretty much it. I don't really care about availability, but you can also turn that on. Let's just check to make sure this rule actually works. So I'll press save. The rule has been made. And to find those rules, let's actually go to manage rules. So you can come here from the manage rules, or you can actually get to the same screen from stack management rules and connectors, and you'll see the same thing. And you can see that this the status for this monitor uptime is currently okay, meaning that this rule is being run. If the query that we created in terms of downtime is, let's see, what was our rule? If there is more than one downtime in the last 2 minutes, then this flag will be set to active. So let's explicitly create that scenario. So this website is up. Let me go to my Apache server, which is the server. I'm going to take down the website. If I hit refresh, good, it's basically unreachable now. And in a couple of minutes, this will change to active. So I'll pause this for a moment. All right, it's been a couple of minutes and you can see that this rule is now active. The rule detects that our Apache server is down. So that's great and all that we're seeing this alert here in this web interface. But what would be great is to receive an email notification anytime this rule is active. So we can do that with the actions area. So if I scroll back down to our rule, there was a third set of configuration that we could have run. If we had the gold license, gold license is no longer available. You'd have to be using the platinum license to get this email functionality. And I think as your needs for Elastic grow, you should definitely consider the platinum license because it opens up a lot of other features in the Elastic platform. But for now, since we're using the free version of the Elastic Stack, we have other options. We have the server log option. What this server log option will do is that anytime this rule is fired, that this rule will also write a record to the kibana.log file on our Kibana server. That's great because then later on, we can use an open source tool called Logstash to ingest that kibana.log file and relay it to our email. Right? It's a very simple setup, so we might as well use it. So I'll click on server log. We are going to create our connector, and the connector can be called anything we want. So let's just say server log connector. Right? Just write something meaningful to yourself. And we will run this connector whenever uptime down monitor. Right? So we'll do that. The level, I'll just pick air. So this level field is for you to decide what is the criticality of this rule, right? And we can use this level field later in our Logstash to help parse out additional information. So that's what this level field is for. This is the message that will actually be written to the kibana.log file. There are more variables that you can choose from. And it's described here in this little pop-up menu. Now I've already prepared a message in advance, so I'm just going to copy and paste it in. All right, so my message is pretty straightforward, just the alert name or rule name, the monitor name, the location, the URL, a status message, and the last error message. So I'm just going to save this. And soon, the Kibana log file on our Kibana server should receive some notifications. So let me go to our Kibana server. So I've SSH to our Kibana server here. I'll go into the var log Kibana directory. I'll open up the kibana.log file, and I'm going to scroll to the bottom. Okay, nothing yet. So I'm going to wait a couple of minutes to see if new records get entered into this kibana.log file. Okay, it's been a couple of minutes, so let's take a look at our kibana.log file. I'll scroll to the bottom. All right, we see it here. So our server connector has written a log entry to our kibana.log file. You can see that this was the message that we pasted into our rule. And you can see that we set the log level to error, which will be useful for us later on when we're using Logstash to parse this JSON object. Okay, so let's install Logstash so that Logstash can consume our Kibana.log file before relaying it to our email system. And here are the installation instructions for Logstash. It uses the exact same dependencies as Kibana. And because we need to install Logstash to the same server as our Kibana.log file, which means the same server as Kibana, it means that I already have these dependencies met already. So I really just need to run this final command, which is install Logstash. If for any reason you don't have these dependencies, just copy each of these lines and paste it into your command line. But for me, I'll just run this one command. And in a moment, Logstash will be installed. Okay, Logstash is installed now. So we can keep moving on. Let's start using Logstash to consume our Kibana.log file and relaying those messages to our email. To do that, we basically need to specify some instructions for Logstash through configuration details. And to do that, I'm going to start a new file called logstash.conf, but you can really call it anything you want. And I do have some configuration details prepared in advance, so I'm just going to copy and paste it in here like this. And I'll quickly explain how this all works. So how this works is that what you're looking at here is a Logstash configuration pipeline. And a pipeline requires at least 2 stages. So there's the mandatory input stage here, which is where you specify the source of the data that you want to ingest. In my case, I want to ingest a Kibana.log file. It's a JSON object, and I want to ingest from the beginning of the file or where it last left off, in terms of ingestion. The other mandatory stage is this output stage here. And what you can see here is that if the log level is error, so if you recall from our Kibana rule, we have a field here and we set log level equals error. So if the level is error here, then we will go ahead and run these 2 output plugins. One output plugin is email, and we're saying connect to our SMTP server, which is a mail trap server, with these credentials, with these connection settings, and we're going to email to user@example.com, and it's going to be from user@example.com. You can replace these with actual emails if you want. This is the subject and this is the body. The other output plugin that we'll run is the standard out, which is just dump the variable message to screen. And I find this useful for debug purposes, but you can completely remove it in production. Okay, so input stage and output stage are the 2 mandatory stages. I also have an optional filter stage here, which takes each of the rows from the Kibana.log file and parses out the message to populate some additional variable names. So if I open up the var log Kibana.log file, scroll to the bottom, and let me just flip between these 2 screens. So I'm saying in the message field, there is this message. So let's take a look. In the message field, which is this one, right? So the message field, let me just copy all this up until these lines. So this message field is going to be supplied from the Kibana.log file, but I'm going to use Grok to parse out that information. And we can test with a Grok debugger. So let me just go to a random Grok debugger that I found online. This is the message. And if I use this Grok pattern, let me just take this and then paste it into here. What this message is saying is, all right, we're expecting server log alert name, and then there's some content here. Then I'm using this Grok pattern data, which is really a placeholder for a regular expression to grab all this information here and load it into the variable or event data field. In Logstash, the appropriate name or the correct vernacular for this is an event data field. Right? So take this content, plug it into this event data field, Then we're expecting monitor name, take this content, plug it into this event data field, and this is the output. So these 4 event data fields become available to us in the output stage, which is why you can see alert name, so alert name, monitor name, reason, which is this reason, last error message, which is this last error message, and the raw message, which came from this field over here. All right, so that's how we're gonna send out the email. Oh, you know what? I should double check the connection information. So Mailtrap is my test development SMTP server. It's great because any emails that come in here stay in here. And this should be the username, and this is the password. So E09, E096060, yeah, F30. Yeah, so I already copied these in advance. All right, so that's basically all there is to our logstash configuration file. And we can go ahead and just start running this. So let's go USR share logstash, binary logstash, and the configuration file is, we have to use an absolute path to our configuration details. All right, and I'll just let this thing run. It might take about a minute or so to load up. Okay, looks like everything is running. You can see a lot of output. If we check our SMTP server, oh right, we get a lot of messages because we're scanning every 2 minutes. We had a lot of backlogged messages. So let me just clear this for a moment. And in a minute or so, we should see more records show up here. Okay, we see some of those emails coming through now. All right, so very basic setup for email notifications. And if you want to, you could do the same thing for TLS rules or SL certificate expiration rules. So under here, create rule. And I scroll down. Yep, so pretty much the same process that you can apply for a TLS monitoring. And that concludes our tutorial on Heartbeat. If you found this video helpful, then give us a like. And if you want to stay up to date on videos as we release them, then press the subscribe button. So we'll see you in the next video.